Nothing's a guarantee in life, especially come bow hunting. I'm hoping this video will help you guys take down the biggest buck in your neighborhood. Like I said, all these little things you can do will stack the odds in your favor. Up your percentages. The more work you do, your odds of taking down your dream buck go way up. So we're talking best deer calls to rattle in those big bucks this fall. Small antlers, big antlers, grunt call, snort wheeze, can call. Those are all calls I'm going to talk about in this video. If you guys wait till the end of the video, I'm going to tell you guys what call works every single time, every single year. It's worked for me the last 3 years to take down 3 great bucks. So I'll stick around to the end of the video, I'll tell you that. But all right, it's February here. We're talking deer calls. What is the best call to use to bring in that big buck this fall? And right here I got 2 sheds I found last year and the year before. I haven't found any sheds this year yet, but it's getting that time of year. I know some guys find some nice sheds already, so hope you guys are finding some sheds. They're going to be dropping a lot here right around Valentine's Day and coming into March, so get out there, look for some sheds. So let's get into deer calls for taking out a big buck, and the deer call you can count on every single year to take down that big buck. Let's get to it. All right guys, on to the grunt call. I really don't care what grunt call you use. In my opinion, like I talked about earlier, some companies market these grunt calls to be way more complicated than what they are, saying they're the best. Yes, some are better than others, but for the most part, a grunt call is a grunt call. So, grunt call, pretty self-explanatory, right? Give a few grunts, one direction. When I'm up in the tree and I do have a buck spotted going opposite away from me. Depends how windy it is that day. You know, if a buck's really close to you, one good tip I have, if a buck's really close to you and he's walking the other way and you need him to come back to present a shot, the buck's over here, turn the tube this way and grunt that way. It doesn't seem to spook him as much, seems to get him over a little more without drawing that kind of attention. Grunt calls, in my opinion, out of the calls I talked about, grunt calls by far are the most less intrusive, or you run the least amount of risk to spook that buck out of the area with a grunt call. I have never spooked a buck with this grunt call. This buck was headed up a fence line about 70 yards away. I got out the grunt call. 2 grunts come to me on a string. That always doesn't work, but it definitely, you know, if you want to get aggressive with calling, not worry about blowing out deer, the grunt tube is the way to go. That buck, hands down, was headed to my neighbor's property, and I recognized that. I got out the grunt tube, gave a quick grunt, and he come to me on a string. Always have a grunt tube on you. Definitely worth carrying, because you got nothing to lose. That buck's going the opposite direction. I've had him look at me, stop, look, and you know, they don't see another buck over there or whatever, and they mosey on. But I've never spooked or blown out deer with the grunt tube, so always keep the grunt tube on you. All right, let's talk can call, guys. This has worked for me. I've had bucks come running across an open field about 100, 150 yards away. They make a smaller can call and a larger one. It's called the can. Well, what you do, what most people know, you flip the can over, and it's a doe bleat. Everybody knows that, you know. But you guys hear all the noise? You hear that? Flipping this can over? I've had deer pick up on that. The secret to the can call is as simple as this. Hear how quiet that is? There's no flipping. Bucks got good ears, right? You know, radars on their ears. They can hear. They hear that, you know. I hate flipping this thing over. Got a lot more control blowing on it too. How long do you want that bleat to be? It could almost sound like a sick dying deer to me, you know. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, you know. So a lot of big trick a lot of guys don't know about, blowing to it. Way more effective tool that way. This really gets effective in November when those bucks are on does and they're breeding does. They hear a doe that they think is in heat. they're gonna come running. So definitely can call has its place. Those first 2, even 3 weeks in November, I've heard of it working. So can call has its place then. Let's talk about the snort wheeze. Snort wheeze has worked for me. It brought a buck to me, not a mature buck, 2.5, 3.5-year-old buck. Brought him right to me. That's the one time I can think it's worked for me. I can think of 2 or 3 times where it scared that mature buck away. You know, it has worked, it has its place. I'm not gonna hit on that snort wheeze too much, but I have seen it work for guys, especially and where there's a lot of big mature bucks around. It seems to work pretty well. For me, the risk versus reward isn't there. Having the 2 small properties I hunt, it's just not worth it to me to risk blowing out even a doe calling all the time. You can see I got 2 sets of antlers here, rattling antlers. Would it surprise you guys if I said these antlers are way more effective than these ones? Little basket rack antlers, 1.5, probably a 2.5-year-old buck here. Which antlers are more effective? Well, it might surprise you guys. These here. I've rattled in 2 great bucks with these antlers, believe it or not. Real high pitch sound. You know, I think by me, if you guys don't have a bunch of mature deer running around, I hunt smaller properties. I think they're used to hearing little 1.5, 2.5-year-old bucks. And if you got just, you know, 1 mature buck, 2 mature bucks in the area, they hear 2 little 1.5, 2.5-year-old bucks spar and fight, and they're like, hey, wait a minute, this is my turf. I'm gonna go show that little buck, you know, this is my territory, I'm coming in. That's just what that 8-point did. He did a snort wheeze and he came to me on a string. So rattling can be very effective. Definitely give it a shot, especially, I wouldn't say hunting bedding areas, but hunting near field edge. If you got a deer real long distance, it can be real effective. If they can't see up there, if you got a real big tree that you're hunting behind, like a big oak tree, definitely rattling has its time and place. Here in Wisconsin, the Midwest, pre-rut really amps up the last 10 days of October. I would say for me, rattling has been more successful during pre-rut the last 10 days of October. November, the doe bleat seems to be quite a bit more effective using the doe bleat. I have rattled in bucks in November as well, but last week of October, rattling's the way to go. I know in Iowa, Kansas, Texas, when you got, you know, 5, 10 big mature deer running around, you can get away with the big antlers because there's a lot bigger deer like this and a lot bigger fighting all the time, where here maybe in Wisconsin and on the smaller parcels I hunt, these big 4.5-year-old and older deer that I target are probably more used to hearing just 1.5, 2.5-year-old bucks fighting, because there's a lot more of them around in where I hunt than big mature deer. Then, you know, hearing this, quite the sound difference, right? It's got a total different tone to it. Real deep. I'm not sure how much you guys can tell on camera, but it's a lot deeper tone with these bigger antlers. If you guys haven't tried the small antlers, find some sheds. An old, I actually used when I was 12 years old, I shot a little basket rack 6-point, and so those smaller antlers can be super effective. If you haven't tried them, give them a shot. I do believe, unfortunately, that there's been some marketing, even false marketing, or some larger companies that put false hope in people's mind. Someone ends up shooting a real giant buck, 200-300-inch buck, and there's some companies that get a hold of that video of them shooting the deer or whatnot, and they add some clips in of them using their special antlers to rattle in that buck. And you know, newer hunters, people inexperienced, they say, hey, if I buy these antlers or this deer call, I'm gonna call in a 200-300-inch buck and harvest it and be successful. That's the furthest from the truth, I can tell you guys right now. Not saying it can't happen, but if you're relying on your deer calls to bring in that mature deer, you're not hunting right. Just think about that. If you're relying on bringing deer in using a call, whether it's a snort wheeze, rattling, grunting, you're not going to be as successful as if you rely on positioning yourself on a mature buck's travel route or where he's with the doe, you're gonna be a lot more successful than thinking, I got the magic antlers or the magic call, I'm gonna go call in a big buck today and shoot him. Something to keep in mind. You're struggling killing the mature deer or the age class deer that you're targeting, you're having a hard time. A lot of people turn to calls, think it's a secret weapon, which it can be in times. Having such a small property, to me, the risk versus reward is not there. Calling, rattling all the time. But if you're doe bleating all the time or grunting all the time, you know, I'm hunting pretty close to some bedding areas. Lots of does bedding, and the big bucks will be bedding there. As you guys know, haven't seen my doe video, does can be a secret bait themselves, especially hunting smaller properties where you can't hold these big mature deer. Having does on your land can be the secret weapon. Be cautious with your calling. I'm not saying calling doesn't work. I know it works. I've seen guys, some guys I follow on YouTube have rattled in some absolute giant bucks, and it's like, oh my gosh, you got that mature buck walking away from you. Yeah, give him a few grunts. You're not hurting nothing. I mean, grunting's not as intrusive or doesn't have the risk as rattling or a snort wheeze, obviously. You got hundreds, thousands of acres to hunt. If you guys just hunt public land, call all you want. Do what I used to do, you know, call, rattle every 30 minutes, do a rattling sequence, grunt. You know, I've shot bucks doing that on public land and here. It works, but you're also gonna scare a lot more deer than you attract. But be careful, rattling too much, letting out those snort wheeze and even the doe bleats to overcall, because you're gonna do more harm than good to your property, in my opinion. So now to the good stuff. What everyone probably, a lot of people that clicked on this video, they're hoping I got the silver bullet. They're hoping I got the call that's gonna work every single time you're out hunting, right? Well, what that call is not any call at all. Don't rely on deer calls. Might not be what some of you wanted to hear, but that's the reality of it. I hate to tell you. A lot of marketing companies, you know, selling fake antlers, and these grunt calls are gonna tell you different. You're gonna say, you got this deer call, look at this 200-300 inch buck that they edited into a video that supposedly the guy shot it with. Well, I can tell you firsthand that's a lot of that's just to line their pockets and make money. So, but the call that works every time is doing your homework, finding where those big bucks are, finding where the does are, finding what routes they travel on public land or on your own land, positioning your stand right, your access right, your exit right, small kill plots, doing the homework, setting yourself up, the mock scrapes, the water holes, doing all that work, and knowing how the big bucks utilize your property, and positioning yourself right is going to work better than any deer call out there. I can guarantee it. So I want to hear from you guys. What is your best deer call out there? Do you guys rely on antlers, grunt calls, snort wheeze? And maybe you do. It works for some people. I'm not saying it doesn't. But I want to know, you know, what's been most successful for you taking down your biggest buck or the most mature deer. Hope you guys are finding some sheds. I haven't found any yet, but we're first week of February here, so I figure they're about 20-30% dropped in the area. You know, around Valentine's Day coming into March, I'm gonna hit it real hard. I'll have the kids out looking for some sheds. Sorry I don't have a secret new can call or golden antlers I rattle together that I could sell you guys to call in those mature deer, but if you guys hunt smart. So thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next week.